Welcome to Unit 4. We're going to start talking about laws in English in this unit. Laws in English are something that you have to cite in your lesson plan, and they are also something that, based on recent exams, we know has been the subject of many questions in the exams. So we're going to start from a lesson in which we will cover some of the basic terminology that you need to talk about laws in English. We're going to start this lesson from some basic terminology that will be used rather frequently when referring to the laws and the key documents. Starting from the context, we will have things like terzo anno di scuola secondaria di primo grado or primo quadrimestre, classe quarta di liceo linguistico, or when talking about the indicazioni nazionali, risultati di apprendimento secondo biennio istituto tecnico. So there's a lot that you really need to express in English, and learning how to say these things before you go to the exam is going to save you so much time. So let's start from some basic terminology about the context. So what schools are we talking about? Lower secondary and upper secondary. You might decide to use middle school and high school. This is fine. It's slightly less exact, but it's absolutely fine. Then we have the types of schools, and so we have liceo, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend translating, because the one guiding light that you need to have when you're at the exam is making sure that your committee understands what you mean. So some people, for example, might like to refer to a liceo as a grammar school. This is the closest approximation that we have to liceo in the UK. However, it's not exactly the same thing, and so you might have committee members wondering what exactly you mean. You always have the option of providing both the Italian and the translation on your slides, and also while you're speaking. This might be advisable. Istituto Tecnico, you can call technical institute or technical school. Professionale is a vocational school. This is really important. The word vocational is exactly what Istituto Professionale is. So rather than professional school, no, you want to use vocational schools, because there are also important European documents, for example, that express the frameworks of competences in vocational education. Then you're going to talk about, presumably, different classes, and so prima, seconda, terza, secondaria di primo grado, secondaria di secondo grado, and so I would recommend finding one taxonomy that you are comfortable with and sticking to it. The easiest one I find is to simply refer to first year of liceo, or a second year class of technical institute, whatever the school you're referring to is. Some people might like to refer to grades, so grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, that's the American version, or year 1, year 2, year 3, that would be the British version. I find this is a little more dangerous because we have three kind of types of schools. So you go from elementary schools, 5 years, and then you start again from the first year middle school, and you have 3 years, and then you have another 5 years in upper secondary schools, and again you start from 1. But in the Anglo-Saxon systems, it's very often a continuous numbering. So like in the UK system, even though technically primary school ends with year 6. When you go to secondary school, you start from year 7 and then year 8 and year 9. And the same happens with the American system. You go from the 1st grade to the 12th grade. So I find this can be a bit confusing. My recommendation would be to stick with 1st, 2nd, 3rd year of. Then we have quadrimestre. This can also be trimestre, pentamestre, whatever your school uses. Just use the word term. So the 1st term, the 2nd term. And then when you're referring to the key documents which explain what the learners are supposed to have achieved by the end of a certain period, then you refer to learning outcomes, the risultati di apprendimento, which, as we will see, are key to some of the national guidelines document. Moving on to some basic terminology regarding laws, we have all of these things that we need to be able to translate very quickly for the exam, both because we need to put some of these in our lesson plan and because we might be asked questions about them. And so these are some of the very basic terms you need to know, starting from the obvious, legge, which is law. Then we move on to things like circolare, which can be translated as circular or memorandum. A very key word is decreto, so decree. Decreto can be many things. Can be a decreto legislativo, which is a legislative decree. I've put the transcription here. Decreto legge, it can be translated as decree law or executive order. It's when the government kind of intervenes in a more direct way than would be standard. Decreto ministeriale, ministerial decree. Decreto del Presidente della Repubblica, DPR, is a presidential decree. Decreto interministeriale is interministerial decree. And then we have another type of document, which is direttiva, translated as directive. Then we have a very important document, which is the Indicazioni Nazionali e Linee Guida, and we're going to look in a lot more details at this in the next lesson, but broadly speaking, we'll try and translate this as the national guidelines. We have the Ministero dell'Istruzione, which is the Ministry of Education, and Ministro dell'Istruzione, which is either the minister, the education minister, or the education secretary. It's a bit more British, but you can essentially call it one of these two. And finally, we have the Nota Ministeriale, which again has multiple possible translations, including ministerial circular or ministerial memorandum. Memorandum is also a potential translation for the idea of circolare. When it comes to the laws, one very important issue, and one that puts us in particular as English teachers in a difficult spot, is how do we translate these things? My guidance would be, is there an official English translation? For example, the CEFR, the Digicomp, the Piano Nazionale Scuola Digitale. These documents have official translations. They're available online. If that's the case, use them. If there is no official English translation, make sure that the committee know what you are referring to. An example of what I mean is something I've seen fairly often in lesson plans. Irina has an ILP. This was in the inclusion section of a lesson plan. Irina has an ILP. That was it. This isn't necessarily going to be clear to all of the committee members, A, because it's only an acronym, and B, because even if the acronym were given in full, we still want to make sure that the committee members know that we are aware of the distinction between, in this case, for example, a PDP and a pay, that we're giving the right student the right document. And so we don't want to leave them wondering what we are referring to. So we will say Irina has an individualized learning plan, and then give it in Italian as well, in parentheses, with the correct reference to the correct law. But what I'm trying to say here is, yes, of course, it's a good idea to show that you can translate terminology and laws into English, absolutely. However, when there is a doubt or even a potential doubt, give both versions, give the Italian and the English. So to make sure that you are saying the right thing and that the committee know what you are saying.